Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Tales from the Core. As always, Dirty Mike Francis with you, my 3'6" brother, Sir Neil of Pace, and super awesome guest, the son of one of our Marine Corps legends, Eugene Sledge. His son, Henry Sledge, is here with us tonight, man.
Good to be here, guys. How are you?
We're great. Who would have thought, man? Like, I joined in 2003. What the old breed was, probably still is, I don't know, but on the Commandant's reading list.
Right.
And now we're sitting here with the son, of Eugene Sledge, man. It's like, it's just unreal. Life is unreal. Like we said on New Year's Eve, like, how did we even get here?
Well, look, guys, I say this all the time because I talk about my dad all over the world. I've always felt a bond with Marine Corps. I've never served. I've never been in the military, but, going back to when I was a kid, I don't know. I would see when I was a kid, if we were out, I would see guys in uniform with the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. I knew I'd just go up to them and start talking to them. And, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, they'd be like, "Hey, my dad was a Marine," and they're just kind of like, "Oh, really? Yeah, sure thing, kid." I go, "He was in the 1st Marine Division. He was at Peleliu in Okinawa," and they'd kind of like, "Oh, okay, 1st Marine Division." They like, okay, this kid actually isn't just feeding us a line, But no, I've always said, one of the K-35, K Company 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. That was just part of my vocabulary as a kid, and it's just a big deal to me.
When did it hit you, if you can remember, of what your dad and the Marines he served with truly did?
From the time I was a kid, I was always interested in World War II history. Okay. So, and when I grew up, my brother and I grew up in the 70s, and then by the 80s, I was a teenager getting into college. But, if you think about the mid to late 70s, we had shows on TV like Gomer Pyle, Hogan's Heroes, things like that. And my brother and I watched that kind of stuff. And I always had this inherent interest in World War II history. Right. So, I would see my dad sitting up late at night writing. As I came to find out later, he was writing what would become With the Old Breed. But because of the interest I had in World War II, both European theater and Pacific theater, I knew that my dad had been a Marine in the Pacific. I knew that he had fought the Japanese. I knew that he had been in the 1st Marine Division. But your question, Mike, obviously goes deeper than that. When did it hit me what he did? Well, I would sit on the floor in his study when I was a kid and look through the time, life, pictorial history of World War II, and when I would get to the chapters dealing with Marines and soldiers fighting the Japanese in the Pacific, I was very aware, okay, that's where my dad was. As I grew older and did more reading on the subject, one of the first books I read, and I read it when I was like 12 years old, was Robert Leakey's Helmet for My Pillow. Classic book, mainstay of Pacific literature. I love that book. I've read it probably 3 times through the years. I remember seeing his copy on his shelf that he had made notes in when he was doing his research and accumulating his thought process to get ready to write With the Old Breed. So this kind of stuff was just ingrained in me from the time I was a kid. But With the Old Breed had probably been out for a while, and somebody had either called my dad or written him a letter, or he had gotten a letter from somebody like Paul Fussell or Studs Terkel, who had read his book and wanted to interview him. And I remember I was probably a teenager, and I remember my mom saying, "Henry, I don't know if you know this, but your dad's a pretty famous guy." And I said, "Well, I'm getting an awareness of that." So, and then, getting older, I just became more interested in the history and obviously going to Peleliu and that kind of thing.
Speaking of Peleliu, shout out to Whip Mam Quang. Got the Peleliu shirt on here tonight. And what a true honor for our good Canadian friend here, Scott Gibson, who portrayed Captain Andy Haldane, Ack, and HBO's The Pacific. It's a big deal. It's four nations. Canada's kicking it off tonight, and I see the screen flashing on your face, so I know you're watching.
Did you see that first goal? I mean, Crosby, McDavid to Crosby to McKinnon. Yeah, beautiful. No, it's a pleasure to be here. And Henry, it's been a long time.
Yeah, been a while, man. How are you?
A little cold now. We're getting a lot of snow, but otherwise good.
Not as much snow as Florida, though.
Oh no, we're getting 35 centimeters tonight, and then Saturday we're getting another 30. So,
well, yeah, we're glad that you could join us. You definitely, a lot of this goes back to you joining us. It's one of the reasons we're sitting here with Henry as well tonight. Yeah, it's interesting to think about, especially whenever we look at these guys, and they are the heroes, right? The big names, and then you talk about Bob Leckie. We got guys like Bassalo, and just those Marines that when we join, guys like your dad, like those are the guys. Even he had sharpshooter rifle qual. I was on my way to expert, and I was like, "Nah, I'm going to drop these off here. I want to be a sharpshooter too."
The cross, man, it looks better, I think.
Iron Cross, man, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's just totally incredible to sit down and talk with somebody whose dad had such an influence. And I mean, Scott, that's one of your biggest roles, right? Like,
oh, that was the biggest. Yeah. Not one of, and it's still the fact that it resonates so much, and even more, and a lot of people, even in comments that I get, will reflect back on Sledge's book and talk about that, which is, I was reading that before I'd ever gone over to Australia to do anything, and the narrative, the flow of that, it was just so personal that it gave me such a great grasp of what the individual Marine was going through at that time. It was very helpful for me to understand how I would have to relate to these guys in the scenes. And I'm so grateful for that. Like, it's Bruce talks about that, the book, a lot as well. That it just I'm Henry's heard all the accolades and everything, but it just one of the best books ever. I mean, like, Leckie's book was good, but it had just a different tone, very different tone to it, and understandably, I guess. But it meant a lot to us, to have that.
And now the book, The Old Breed, The Complete Story Revealed, that's coming out.
Yeah, June 3rd.
June 3rd.
That's right. And so the story behind that, guys, is that my dad's original manuscript was pretty long, and a lot of it got edited out. And I'm saying this really quick to not just get too mired down in details. And we can talk about it all you want, but
you got nothing but
time. In 2021, Scott, when I first started kind of getting back into all this and really getting to know Leighton and getting back involved with the whole World War II community and re-embracing the Pacific and all of that, my mother and I were having a conversation, and she said, you ought to try to get your hands on that original unedited manuscript of your dad's book, because there's a lot of material in there that might make a good book unto itself. And so I went there, I had to go through the archives at Auburn University and get that, and I did. And I just sat down with that and with the old breed and the yellow highlighter and highlighted everything that was not published. And I went through like 5 highlighters. And when I printed it out, I'll show it to you. They sent it to me on a PDF. When I printed it out, this is the original unedited manuscript.
Wow.
So, now a lot of that got published, but a lot of it didn't. And so I had to go through and highlight, and I got pretty micro with it. Like I could tell, and I know my dad's well enough, I could see a paragraph like, okay, most of this paragraph got published with the old breed, but here are a couple of sentences that didn't make it in, well, I highlighted those and then got through all of it and went back through and read it again. And I mean, this is a pretty immersive process. God, it just seemed like it took forever. But I had to really get as intimately familiar with the material as I could, and then decide, okay, of this stuff that got cut, what do I want to use and what do I not want to use? And so after sitting down and typing, I decided the best way to do this. And I thought about getting a co-author. I approached one person, kind of glad that I did not do that. I ended up Richard Frank, who's a historian, and then John McManus, who's a historian. They're both really good friends of mine. Had separate conversations with them, and they were like, you can do this yourself, Henry. You don't need a co-author. So I decided to just bring that material that got cut that I wanted to use into my own manuscript and tie it all together with my memories of the conversations I had with my dad, growing up, and the conversations we had that led me to want to go to Peleliu in 1999, and just continue to have this deep interest in the subject. And so that's what I did. And so I did not want to reproduce with the old breed. I don't think anybody can read my dad's book and then read what I got coming out and just go, well, I mean, he just took his dad's book and threw his own little introduction on there. And, I don't think anybody can say that. There's a lot of material in there that's pretty cool. I think I mentioned it to you, Neil, and you may have mentioned it to you, Mike, that I've got 2 Marine Corps generals who read this thing and gave me some really strong endorsements.
Yep.
So the people who've read it, Scott, Julie Chung being one of them, our friend Julie, I had about 8 people read it, and they were all just really excited about it. So, we'll see what it does.
How do I get a copy of that early?
It's on Amazon for pre-order, but
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask about pre-order.
It is on Amazon now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll drop a link in that then whenever we upload this to YouTube, so
sure, yeah,
people can pre-order it.
That link works because people have told me that they have done that. But I mean, look, guys, it was a passion project, but I'm really it's like this. I explained it. Some of these things I've spoken at. It's like if you take with the old breed and you take the linear storyline of my dad enlists in the Marines, he goes to Pavuvu, Peleliu, Okinawa. If you with the old breed is this. If you take my book, they interlock. I try to not. I mean, obviously, it's a linear storyline. I don't make up this stuff that didn't happen, but the stuff that did get published, I try to tell that in my own words and do it in a way that seems fresh, And then the stuff that I bring in that was not published is like, okay, this is pretty cool, This is some good extra material.
And I think, to one of the points that you said earlier, just from the stories you heard from your father. So, obviously Neil and I got a couple deployments under our belts. And if we did a story like your father did, there would be those gaps because tons of things happen between kind of the main events, the main stories. And I'm excited to read it. I think that, you sitting there listening to stories from your father and then being able to go through and see what didn't get published to ensure that some of those obviously moments that he shared that are probably most important or more important to him made their way into the story, into the next book that's coming out June 3rd.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
What's crazy is that, and this is going to sound kind of funny, but when I'm at work, I have Audible, so I can't sit there and open up a book and read it. So if I'm all right, I need something to listen to. I can't just listen to machines whirring all day.
Right.
So I got With the Old Breed, and I got Islands of the Damned. I got Helmet for My Pillow, all on Audible. I got all these World War II and World War I books on Audible that I'll listen to. But With the Old Breed is the absolute go-to. Like, I'll get done. It's like, I think like 16 or 17 hours worth of listening, and I'll run through it. And then I get done with it. I'm like, man, there's always something else that I pick up every time, like.
Who narrates it?
Is it Joe Mazzello?
That's Mazzello.
There have been a
yeah.
couple of versions.
Yep, Mazzello.
Joe.
The first one that I ever found, though, and this is before I got Audible, was on YouTube, and they had like, I think they were like almost an hour long, like, or maybe 3 or 4 hours long, clips of different parts of the book.
And somebody reading it.
George Wilson. Yeah, it's narrated by George Wilson.
I've heard some of that, and I've heard some of that. I've not listened to all of it. It's kind of weird to hear that, man, because I don't know. I mean, I remember the way my dad talked and the way I've read With the Old Breed so many times, and then to hear the way he reads some, it's just weird. I guess it works. He was a professional. Was George Wilson a voice actor? I don't know. It worked, but I don't know. It has a stilted feel to it to me. I haven't heard Joe's version.
You know what was? Oh yeah, go ahead there.
Oh no, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's it's decent.
Henry, I haven't seen you since I went to Peleliu. Being in that administration building just blew my mind because it was so accurately, almost like what HBO built was incredible, and the amount of attention they gave to everything in order to be accurate.
Yeah,
with your father's book, everything with the war and that, and I was in that building and I felt like I was on set in Australia, except the whole jungle had grown back,
right?
Which was weird because obviously everything was just burnt. It looked like the crater of the moon when you were there. But
right,
my appreciation for what they did, and to obviously to honor the battle and honor everything that your father wrote in detail, was very, very moving to me.
So when I was there in '99, which is a long time ago, we went over to the admin building and actually, I mean, I think by the time the invasion started, the Japanese had then pulled their HQ out of there and started to move back into Bloody Nose Ridge, if I remember correctly. But obviously that building is an iconic landmark. And, we walked through it, and I mean, I didn't think, I love the way they shot the scenes in the Pacific, the scene that night, I love that scene. We've discussed it many times. I liked all that. I guess if you literally go by my dad's book, they did not bivouac in that building the first night. I mean, they pushed on, actually on past it, and they actually kind of bivouac just south of the airfield. And there was some confusion, 3.5 and 3.7, K35 and K37 got intertwined. They had to sort them out, and it was actually Silent Lou Walt who actually sorted them out. And there's some cool stuff that didn't get published about that, but yeah, beautifully. I mean, the attention that HBO put into it. I mean, you can see why it cost a lot of money, because they spared no expense on detail. But yeah, I mean, that was an iconic site for sure.
Yeah, that just like, as an actor doing it and being in it, and they have to make that a landmark, and all the scenes that they derive from it, and the Amtrak showing up and everything. I know that wasn't an actuality, but it's so difficult for them to put that together. Like, let's say without your father's book, how do they, without having Sledge, with, you know what I mean? Like it's
sure. It's that scene with the Amtrak. I love that scene though, because that really, you get a sense from that scene of the solidarity that's building with K35. You know, when especially when hillbillies like hold here till we load our wounded, you can take your ass back wherever you want. You know, that's I mean that, and you see the guys kind of lining up there, looking out and smiling when you and hillbilly go out there and talk to the Amtrak driver. I mean that's establishing that unit solidarity, which, you know, Neil and Mike, I mean, you guys are actual Marines. That's endemic to everything, right? I mean, that is crucial to everything. I would think.
The little things, yeah.
I made the point on the podcast last night we did because we were recapping our 20-year Afghanistan reunion. And I was talking about how we just do everything together. And you see a lot of that. They did a great job in the film or the miniseries HBO of showing the bond. Even on the train, right? Being like the last ones getting off, going home. I mean, we experienced that even still with the reunion. One of our guys, he's like, man, being on the plane alone, you know, like going home from the reunion alone, like not being with our guys. I think that they did an incredible job showing that. And I even made the comment that, you know, Marines, we don't have to be taught to have a battle buddy. Like we don't really even use that term. The Army has to teach you, have a battle buddy, take a battle buddy everywhere you go. Marines just do it. It's part of the brotherhood. It's part of the bond. It's part of, as my CEO, who's now a colonel at the Iraq reunion, said that the superpower of the Marine Corps is love.
Yeah.
And our love for one another that we have, it's what makes us so unbelievably fierce, is that we would do anything for each other, no matter what the cost or what it took.
What I saw, was it, so Mike, was it your reunion or Neil, were both of you at it, or were you guys in separate units? Forgive my ignorance here.
I'll let you talk, Neil, because I talk all the time.
I looked at the pictures on Facebook of you guys at that reunion, and it was cool because what struck me was, you know, here's I mean, a lot of guys were there. I could see that. And it just reminded me of when I was a kid hearing my dad talk about starting to go to 1st Marine Division reunions. And I never went to one with him, and I regret that. I wish I could have. But I saw some pictures, you know, of reunions he'd been at, and then to see you guys, and you're, you know, that will never, I mean, technology changes, the weapons of war, the way we wage war, that may always change, but the human spirit, and like you said, the love that Marines are going to have for each other is a baseline through all of it.
Absolutely.
And I'm not speaking from experience. That's the first thing, you know, that I try to get out there. I've never been in the military, and I felt some shyness at first when I started kind of getting out there, and because a lot of these things I speak at, there are Marines there, you know, and I felt a little bit of reticence at first because I've never, like I said, I've never been in combat. I've never experienced this stuff for myself. But that, I mean, just the brotherhood of the Marine Corps and what these guys say to me, knowing, hey man, we know who your father was. That, I mean, that just means the world to me. I can't. It's hard to explain.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling. You know, Bruce, that moment, you know, snafu. It didn't happen, did it? With snafu and the train with your father?
No, because so tent camp on Okinawa on the Motobu Peninsula at the end of the fighting on Okinawa.
Yeah,
snafu had been at Gloucester. He would have gone home. Anybody who'd been at Cape Gloucester, like Jay Deloach, the guys who had been at Cape Gloucester, that was their third, you know, Gloucester, Peleliu, Okinawa. The Guadalcanal guys would have been gone by then. But if they'd been at Gloucester, they would have gone home, right? So my dad still had one to go because Peleliu was his first. Snafu would have gone home. Bergen would have gone. Well, no, Bergen was up there on the Northern Peninsula, but he did not go to China. Snafu did not go to China. I guess then the rotation kicked in and they were sent home, whereas my dad had come out and actually got in theater March of 44. So then he had to go to Peking.
I mean, Bruce, I think Bruce has mentioned that to you before, where he had to fight for that scene.
Oh, the train?
Yeah.
They you know, I mean, that's artistic license that certainly has its place. I mean, because you've seen Bergen and Snafu and Sledge, to a lesser extent, Jay DeLoe. Jay DeLoe ends up after Peleliu getting moved out of K Company. Well, that's what they said in the Pacific. That wasn't the case because my dad talks about them on Okinawa. They shared a foxhole, and that was something that didn't get published. It was a pretty cool little pit. They were pinned down by a Nambu machine gun for a while. But, yeah, I mean, that scene, Scott, was it was a beautiful scene, though, right? I mean, you can't show Sledge going to China. I mean, China Marine was a separate deal, and they actually, HBO did option that book. But the parts of China Marine that we saw in the Pacific are when he went dove hunting with my grandfather. And when he was at the registrar's office at Auburn University, after the war, that was from China Marine. But no, that scene on the train, I mean, it's very poignant. And they have to have that kind of as that ending piece for the camaraderie, when the guys are coming home.
Yeah. You need that in the narrative. And that's why Bruce fought so hard for it. Wanted to take it out. They took the scene out with Haldane and Bass alone on Guadalcanal. Yeah, they never would have met, or that situation that wasn't real. But it was such a poignant moment. It was so poignant for Bruce when we were filming it that he came up and he was in tears.
Yeah,
saying, he was just like, "Oh my God! Like I've been writing about these guys for so long, and here you are portraying it." And it was just a beautiful moment, but it was cut for continuity, or that they didn't, it's just, Haldane isn't introduced yet, even though he was a very big part of Guadalcanal and Cape Gloucester and et cetera and so forth. And why I say that or bring that up is just in relation to Snafu. He didn't go to the reunions, right? He went to one, he went to one. Maybe later on.
Yeah. Well, now remember, my dad didn't go.
Yeah, he didn't go. Yeah.
There's not like this easy company 506 where those guys are going to reunions. My father didn't go to reunions until after with the old breed.
Wow. Honestly, were they having them though? They were like
they were having it. Well, yeah, they were having them. But I've got a picture of, and it's out there. Hell, you probably seen it, of my dad and Snafu and a guy named Paul Wright. Paul Wright was a comm guy. He laid comm wire.
Yeah.
And he's not talked about it with the old breed, I don't think, but he's talked about it in the unpublished stuff. And I talk about him because my dad has some material in there. But there's a picture of my dad, Paul Wright, and Snafu at a reunion. I don't think my dad, if I remember this correctly, with the old breed, got out there in 1981 and began to, gain some recognition, and guys started reading it and they sought my dad out. Hey, please come to our reunions, because he was kind of in that mindset of he just wanted to put it all behind him,
Were they having them though?
I think so.
3-5 or just the first? Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question, and I don't know.
That's a long time. I mean, he leaves China and comes back, and then he goes to his first one in the 80s.
It was early 80s. I mean, I was 3-5 having reunions. I don't know when the first K-35 reunion would have been. I don't know.
Did he talk to you about not going or why?
Well, he certainly missed the guys. I mean, because he spoke to all of them as he was, writing the book. I can tell you this, I don't remember any conversations earlier before the book, hey, there's a reunion. My mom saying, Gene, do you want to go? My dad's like, no, I don't want to go. I don't remember anything like that. Okay. And so I don't like to create false dialogue. What I do remember is when he did start going, I mean, obviously he loved seeing the guys, but he would come home. And I think Bill Layden had some similar, because Bill Layden was somebody I was very close. First guy I called when my dad died.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But I think Bill struggled with some of this too. But I know my dad, I mean, it was such an emotional thing for him. He loved seeing the guys. And they had some joyous times, but he would come home and he would just be emotionally wrung out for 2 weeks.
Gosh, man.
I mean, borderline sick.
I mean, we didn't go through anything like what those boys went through. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting though. Marines are Marines. And we have guys who, so Simplifying America's Fun, they pay for everything. They pay for the venue that we're at. They pay for the plane tickets. They book the plane tickets for us. Like we're estimating each of these reunions is about $100,000. They do 20 of them a year. So we're looking at about $2 million that they spend for these unit reunions because they understand how important they are. And even with things being paid for, the food is cooked for you, everything. Guys still have this hesitancy and this reluctantness to go. And the first one we ever did was May of 2023. It was our 2005 to 2006 Iraq deployment. And I'm telling you, if I wasn't co-hosting that thing, I don't know if I would have went because I was even just days prior trying to come up with excuses. Oh, I've been away from home. I need to get back to Florida. I've got my golf clubs. I can't take them there. Like, I was just like trying to come up with excuses to not go. And I think just we have this, we remember each other, how we were when we served together. And I feel like there's this nervous anxiety of what people are going to perceive of me, what I might perceive of them, 20 years later. But I know a lot of guys, we had guys that didn't come to the Iraq one, that came to the Afghanistan one, that did both deployments. And they're like, dude, thank you for talking me into this. Like, this has been incredible. And yeah, I've been emotionally exhausted just for 3 days. I mean, I such a high being around these guys, but then now they do a group therapy. I took part in that group therapy. We discussed, some of the guys we lost, and yeah, it's freaking emotional, man. Absolutely. And I can see how somebody might not want to go to it. Like, hey, I'll sit the next one out just because it is so emotional. But hey, they do bull riding now, so why not?
Well, with Snafu, I think he only went to that one.
Really?
After someone died. Yeah, because he just one of those, like Bergen told me, sometimes when the shit hit the fan, it's like, where's Snafu?
See, I know I've heard you say that, Scott. I never heard that, but
right.
But
I don't say that like I wouldn't be that guy that maybe the shit hit the fan and I wasn't there. I just, for him, maybe if he felt that way about being around the guys, maybe he didn't want to go. Bill Layden, right? Bergie said, Bill Layden wasn't an asshole, or the way he was portrayed and stuff like that. I think these guys would have a hard time, and Mike and Neil, you can speak to that. Like, I don't mean it to be judgmental. I mean it to be apologetic in the sense of, holy shit, what you're going through. And if some guy's one way or the other, and maybe he just feels like his service or conduct wasn't, I'm sure there's guys that are like that. Just like, hey, maybe I didn't do my job, or I've been with older veterans that didn't see service or fight, and then they have a hard time going to all these ceremonies because they didn't carry a weapon or shoot anyone. And it's just a hard thing.
I read an article a couple of years back about Marines who, like, kind of going through this inferiority complex because they haven't deployed, they haven't gone to combat. And I mean, I talked to guys who, man, when I got out, I was working with this Vietnam vet, and then we had this other Marine working with us, and he was in during the 90s. And he even said to us, I think it was the first time I'd ever heard someone say, yeah, I never did the things you guys did. And they feel a little bit lesser. And it could be the same in combat, or, we had a guy show up at this one who he's like, dude, I was such an asshole to everybody. And like, he was nervous because, he felt like he was an asshole and, wouldn't be received well. And yeah, Marines, dude, we're just, like high schoolers on cocaine, right? Like, yeah. We have our own drama, little things that we have to deal with and handle. So, you would think that anybody would jump at the chance to do a reunion and see the boys, but yeah, it's not always that case. And
I know my dad told me, and Scotty here would, Bergen apparently said some stuff about Snafu. My dad dug in with Snafu a lot. He also dug in with a guy named George Surratt, who Surratt gets talked about a lot in this stuff. They didn't portray Surratt in the miniseries. He was not somebody I ever met. I don't know that he ever went to a reunion. But, I grew up hearing about Snafu. I mean, obviously with a name like Snafu, that's kind of iconic. You're going to hear that as a kid and not forget that. But, he was a hard guy to get to know coming in after Cape Gloucester like my dad did and those other guys. And I asked my dad, I was like, was Snafu, was he just an asshole all the time? And he said, well, it may have been after the war that as they reconnected when Snafu, came to know with the old breed. And he and my father talked. I don't know if this was on the phone or in person. It was probably in person because I know my mom and dad went over to Louisiana to visit them. And then Snafu and his wife came over to Alabama to visit my mom and dad. And that's when I met him one time. But my dad asked him about that. And Snafu said, look, Sledgehammer, by the time you came in, I had already lost so many friends that I wasn't going to go through it again. I was not going to let myself get close to somebody else who was probably just going to end up buying it, But obviously, that wall came down the longer my father was in combat. But I'm sure for you guys that's a common. I guess that's kind of part of that. Like you say, you're the one guy who said I was an asshole to everybody.
I know when I was section leader. We got back in March 2006, and this happened to be all of a sudden we started getting a bunch of new guys, including Neil, and even the guys that came to my section that were assault men. I had no desire whatsoever to get close to them, and as the years have passed, I've spoken to some of them about it, and it's like, it's not that I didn't like you guys. It's I wasn't going back over there with you. And I didn't want to get close to somebody that I might lose and not have, and then the guilt, like it came up in group, man. Like, and it's crazy because I think we all feel this way. I'm sure Neil, you felt this way even. It's like when we get out, we did our time, but then the next group goes out, like Neil and them in 2007, and you feel guilty for not going with them. Like, even though your contract's up, like you feel this guilt. The one was talking about how he went and saw them on the bus as they drove off for Cherry Point to fly over. And he's like, the feeling that he had of just guilt that he wasn't on that bus with them. We deal with a lot of that stuff. And I mean, I can't even begin to imagine you've been to, all four of us have been to Peleliu, which is kind of crazy. I mean, how anybody even survived that in the first place.
Let me ask this question. You talk about seeing the guys off and feeling, or not, you knew there were guys who saw the other guys off and felt guilt. One of it may have been mentioned in With the Old Breed, but he talked about it a lot more in the unpublished material. But after Peleliu, they come back to Pavuvu. They start, and then certainly on Okinawa, you had guys who rotated home. And my dad talked about how they started getting letters from these guys who'd rotated home. And some of these guys were talking about how they missed K Company and wanted to come back. And so they're sitting in the mud of Okinawa, and reading these letters by these K Company veterans who were home and talking about how I can't relate. I want to come back. I miss you guys. I want to come back. I mean, a different time, a different set of circumstances, but is that both of you are nodding. So I take it that's
100%.
Dude, I mean, I miss the hell out of you guys, man. Like when you guys went, like,
man, I had to watch. I got out November of 2009. 3-6 Lima Company was the main effort in the Marja push. I believe they were the main effort. 3-6 Lima Company. I want to say I'm not sure. Maybe I know 3-6. I know 6th Marine Regiment. They were the guys, but that was 2 months after I gotten out. And you talk about some guilt, man. I'm like, dude, I'm missing out on Helmand Province and, most Tarek and wow, all I could do was just sit there on the sidelines essentially, It's like, man, it's yeah.
So it's funny, people ask me what I think about war movies. And the hands down, like I think absolute worst war movie ever made, like Dumbo Drop was better than this one, was Hurt Locker. Hurt Locker was just absolute trash. Plus, like I did a bunch of, like EOD type stuff. Like we detonated a bunch of things because that was my job, was to an infantryman with demolitions. And so, I mean, that was just ungodly, unrealistic, except for the final scene when he's back from deployment and he's in that grocery store. He's trying to figure out which cereal to pick out. And he just grabs a cereal and puts it in. And then he's back home washing dishes. And then next thing you know, he's back there in the suit, because he redeployed. And I'm like, man, that's one of the most accurate scenes to me. And like coincidentally, the worst movie ever made.
Yeah.
Hurt Locker, you said?
Yes.
I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
Yeah, don't watch it. If you're going to watch it, watch like the last 10 minutes because it's absolutely horrible. But yeah, I mean, just exactly what you're just saying, Henry, how being back home and you can't relate. And then, I mean, man, just like, I remember being back in St. Louis and you're around all these people, and we've talked about it on the podcast because we've talked about the mental health struggles and different things like that to deal with. I mean, you're around these guys every single day, and then you're just not, and you don't even know what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
What struck me with, well, I mean, the entire memoir did with the Old Breed, the level of detail. I mean, from the sound of rounds passing by your head, it's a snap. It's not like a or it might be, but it's more of a snap. We all, you just know that. But besides that, talking about compassion for your brothers, the love that you have for them. It was to the point where, obviously you would do anything for each other. You give your last MRE or whatever. If they needed that last sip of water, you give it to them, and you wouldn't think twice about it. The same thing with, like, say if somebody got to go home for whatever reason. I never once felt an ounce of like jealousy or envy. Like, we all wanted to go home, of course, but when you hear about this guy getting ready to go home, you're like, oh man, I'm happy. I am genuinely happy for him. And you kind of feel happy, like vicariously, through them. It's like you can feel it for them. It's just a weird phenomenon. It's you love your guys that much, that you're happy for them when anything positive comes up, even if it's them going home and you're still stuck there. It's wild.
I think that's one of the most incredible things about, like with the Old Breed, is just, it always amazes me to this day how Marines are Marines. Like, when you read these stories, these books, these memoirs, and just like, man, they were exactly like us, or we're exactly like them.
Yeah.
I think I even made a joke on one of these shows how, baseball pitchers, they pitch faster, and swimmers, like, world records are always being broken. And I'm like, Marines, we just are the only people that don't evolve. We're exactly like they were back in World War II and World War I and damn Ton Tavern 1775. We're all exactly the same. We're de-evolved.
Born in a bar.
That's right.
That's the mentality, I guess. That's setting the tone.
So with the new book coming out,
mm-hmm.
Is there anything that stands out to you that's going to be included in this one that you're just like, that's the thing? Like, you're pumped, you're excited that this is being shared and included?
That's a great question. I mean, there's not one thing. There's a lot. I mean, I will tell you, it seemed to me, and I read exhaustively, read and reread with the Old Breed to make sure that as I was putting this together, I wasn't, like I already told you guys, just aping that, right? So there's nothing in there that's like, oh, we thought he was like this. Well, now we find out he's like this. There's nothing like that. This isn't a tell-all, revealing something like that. It's just more of the same. The brotherhood that you guys talk about, you just get more of that. You get, like describing the landing at Peleliu, which, I mean, when I went to Peleliu, man, I remember, God, the feeling of being on Orange Beach too, where K-35 came ashore, because I had read and reread that part of the landing. That I don't know what it was about. That was just like that money shot for me, man. And that was a tricky one, because I had to describe it. I mean, obviously you can only describe it so many ways. And I didn't want to just cop what my dad wrote. So I had to draw in memories of conversations he and I had about things. And, but what struck me is, like, if you watch the landing scene in the Pacific, which is brilliantly shot, I think it's better than the landing scene at Saving Private Ryan, which we've all heard about, which was great. The ride in, the sense I got from the ride in on those amphibious tractors took a lot longer than it seemed like. And he talked about, and with the Obreed, he talks about, in one place he talks about the LVTs hit those reefs and they're all thrown against each other as the amphibious tractor's crawling up over the reef, and then it gets down past the reef. Well, the way it really happened, from reading all of this multiple times, was that they hit the reef, bumped into another tractor, got disentangled from that, settled into deeper water, went up on the reef again. It was like that part right there was this alternate grinding up on the reef. They're all being thrown against each other with Jap shells or just hitting everywhere, back into slightly deeper water, back up on the reef, like 2 or 3 times. That was one thing that stood out in my mind. But like I said, I mean, a lot of great stuff got cut out of the Okinawa part. And to try to, I'm trying to not just turn this into where I'm sitting here rambling and you guys are just listening to me. You talk about your buddies who felt guilt, and things like that. My dad talked about it. Some of this was with the Obreed, but talked a lot in the unpublished stuff about the strange chance of war, the arithmetic of war, and how, here by the latter stages of Okinawa, when they're getting down past Shuri, past the Shuri line before they get to Kanishi Ridge, when they were in that really, there was just kind of this stalemate before they got to Shuri around Half Moon Hill. Okay. And of course, Shuri line was anchored on the west by Sugarloaf Hill and Half Moon Hill. Sugarloaf being the westernmost anchor point, Sugarloaf and Half Moon being to the east of that. Yeah. And it was just this quagmire, flooded garbage pit. That was where my dad used the expression "hell's own cesspool."
Yeah. And
they were there, stalemated. Armor couldn't move. Nothing could move. It was raining constantly. They were there for 10 days. In the scene where it's Lieutenant Mac, but he's actually a composite character of Mac and a guy named Shadow Loveday. Sledge, I need a stovepipe boy, or I need a stovepipe boy. Sledge, that's you. God damn it, Sledge, where the fuck are you? It's when Joe goes up on top of the ridge and he's taking a piss, and he slips and falls down into the shell hole, and there's a rotted corpse there. That's a composite scene of something that was near Half Moon Hill, okay? And that's detail that nobody really needs to hear, I guess, but it just stood out in my mind. But in that area, and when they move on past that, start getting on to Shuri and on past Shuri, he talks a lot about these replacements who would come up. And, I mean, these are guys who had 6 weeks of training, because their casualties are so bad, they're just having to get guys into the pipeline as quick as they can. And he talks about these guys coming up and just the look of utter despair on their faces when they look around and see, like it's so bad. There's so much counter battery fire in this area that there are Marine corpses who haven't been buried yet. You guys are Marines. Am I correct in saying the first thing a Marine is going to do is take care of his buddy's remains?
Yeah, you won't leave him behind. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're in an area where they get dug in and they're looking out, and George Surratt's like, damn, Sledgehammer, how come all them poor guys ain't been buried yet? Well, they start taking Jap 75 and 150 millimeter counter battery fire, and they figure out really quick there's so much outgoing American fire and incoming Japanese fire that nobody can get out to bury these guys.
Right.
And so he talks about these replacements coming up, and just they get up there, and the look of utter hopelessness and despondency, because they haven't even been in a combat zone yet. And here they are coming into Half Moon Hill.
Yeah. Right into the fire.
But he talks about another guy who comes up, and literally the guy reports up. He's got, brand new gear, weapon, helmet, cloth covered helmet, all that. No sooner than he reports into an NCO than a sniper bullet whizzes by and knocks his helmet off. It doesn't kill him, but it knocks his helmet off, knocks him down. They think the guy's taking a fatal headshot. Turns out he didn't, but he gets up and, he's got a scar on his head. His helmet's got a hole in it. And he's, a corpsman comes up and tags him, and he's evacuated at that point. Like literally been in K35 all of about 10 minutes. And so the point of this is that my father talked a lot about this, that, here we've been there since freaking the beginning of Peleliu, day after day after day, going through that. And then now we've been on the front lines since Love Day, or D-Day, as he never called it Love Day, which was D-Day at Okinawa. April Fool's Day of 45, fighting all the way down through Okinawa to Shuri and on beyond. And he says, we're just grinding it out. And here comes a replacement. Still smells like aftershave. And he gets hit by a sniper bullet and gets to the rear, and he's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. But not even get on the muster roll, apparently, right?
Well, you say that, and that's exactly, in some cases, what happened.
Wild, man. And like you said, they've been there doing that day in and day out, night in and night out for Peleliu, all the way up till ending part of May into June on Okinawa. It's just wild, man.
Yeah.
It is insane.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to it. Also looking forward to, I don't know, is this something, can we talk about the Library of Congress?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we talk about that?
Hey, while you're doing that, let me get something. Hold on.
I like it. So I'm going to talk about the Library of Congress.
Oh, Slider's going to be there. We know that.
I'll be somehow, some way.
He's going to slide into the library.
So that's the Bible right there.
Oh, wow.
So I'll be handing that over to him. And it's supposed to be a symposium. There's still ongoing conversation. Leighton and I talk about once a week. I think they're kind of still trying to figure out some of the financial aspects of it, but whether Kirk Sadusky is there, whether certain people like that are there, we don't know yet. But the part that I have been assured that, like, my involvement, the Bible, them taking the Bible into their collection, that will happen. But you can talk about whatever you want.
So, while we're here, and I don't know if Leighton's probably not watching because it's 4 hours ahead of us. He'll catch it. I told him he's too nice, because we've had calls. I'm helping with the financial side and the funding, and I'm like, brother, listen, this is a huge moment. This is once in a lifetime, and if people want to be there, they'll find their way there. Obviously, to make it a good event. We have no problems like raising funds and different things like that. Mm-hmm. And we're working on that, especially down here in South Florida. I tell this story. This is a dead honest, truthful story, man. When people to tell people how much money there is down here. This woman got mad at her ex-husband and drove her brand new Rolls Royce into their $3 million piece of artwork they had in their front yard. Wow. That's the kind of money that we got down here. Right, just like I'm sure her insurance company dropped it, but but I tell Leighton, because he's like, this is how much we need. He sent me over the budget, and I'm like, well, listen, we're going to take care of Sledge and everybody, and obviously take care of our good friends like Scott and Dale if he comes, and whoever else we can. But a lot of these people, I don't know, maybe I'm jaded. I'm not trying to. Do I sound like an asshole? I'm not trying to be one. I just think Leighton's too nice. You almost think he's Canadian.
No, that's no, not at all. So you're more involved in it than I realized.
A little bit.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Leighton had not told me that. This not that there was any reason that you would tell me that.
No, I'm a side chick. That's why.
Side piece. Yeah. That could be a cool symposium, though, if they get the people. But that's the thing. I mean, it was going to be a 2-day thing. Now I think it's going to be a 1-day thing.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. But to have my dad's Bible in the Library of Congress, I mean, that could. Travis Bickford, who is my contact, my main point of contact with LOC, he's come to visit me with a Marine officer, and it was pretty cool. They looked at the Bible and explained how they would curate it and preserve it and restitch it. And, that was really interesting to me. And I just thought, man, because I mean, it's sitting here in this room down here, just in this little box. I mean, it's never seen by anybody,
Right.
So I'm honored that they want it. I think it would be a great thing for my dad's legacy,
I've been asked this by individuals, Marines. And so I know Leighton told me that Library of Congress approached you guys. The question the Marines have been asking me, is there a reason why not the Marine Corps Museum?
Well, I mean, the Marine Corps Museum has never approached me and asked me for anything. I will tell you this. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, here's his hat that he wore.
Wow.
Scott, you've already seen all this.
Man.
The dungaree jacket up there, the Japanese flag, he took that off a dead one on Okinawa. You can see his K-bar, the scene in part 7 where he was looking at a Japanese bayonet and the other guys over there cutting teeth out. And he's like, for Christ's sakes, put him out of his misery. And I was like, fuck off. And he throws the bayonet down. Well, I mean, he actually brought a Japanese bayonet home from that bunker. So, I mean, I got a lot of stuff. I got his combat pack. Got his 45 that he carried through Okinawa.
Wow.
I got some great stuff. I've talked to the World War II Museum in New Orleans about those things, so those things will probably be going there. We have a great relationship with those people. I'll be speaking at the international conference there in November. I spoke at the one in November 22. So we just have a really good relationship with them. I know John Bernstein with the Museum of the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. John and I communicate on Facebook. We've had some great conversations.
I figured it had to do with just they didn't reach out. Library of Congress did.
There's nothing like I'm not going to sit here and tell you it won't go there because of this. It's nothing like that at all.
Yeah, I got to get answers from my people.
Yeah, no, I mean they've just never reached out to me and said we want these things, and now I've kind of gotten pretty entrenched with the World War II Museum, and built relationships there, and they've been like going all the way back to 2010 when the Pacific came out. They've really just been super to my family and to me. But I know the Museum of the Marine Corps, I've never been there. I'd love to go and visit. They've got a little kiosk, not a kiosk, but a little wall, a tiny little wall where it shows a picture of my dad and a placard about him, if I'm not mistaken. So
it's a phenomenal museum.
You've been there?
When we were coming back from AP Hill, they just surprised us. We were on the bus, and
that's right.
We're like, where are we? Yeah, where are we at?
You got like lost in there. They had to come find you or something.
Yeah, I was the last one out. First started. Hey, Father, what's up, man? Sorry, I was stuck, man. I was enamored by the Iwo Jima flag. I was like,
he's over there in the corner, fucking.
Yeah, he's like, hey, go ahead and blow it up. So started.
The guy who was one of the I don't want to use the wrong term, consultants, I guess, when that museum was being designed, okay, and we're going back to the early 2000s, was Colonel Joe Alexander. All right, Joe was an amphibious battalion commander in Vietnam. Wrote a couple books, Storm Landings, wrote a book on Tarawa, Utmost Savagery. Joe was a very deep personal friend of mine. My son is named after him. Wow. My son is named Joseph Alexander Sledge. Joe, I remember, and Joe passed away 10 years ago, when they were designing the Museum of the Marine Corps, I remember him telling me they came to him, and I'm sure there were others too, but they sought his opinion, and he told them, he said, in my opinion, you need to make this museum the heart, the backbone of the Corps is the enlisted man. You need to make this museum focus on them. And somehow my dad's name got pulled into all that in his book and all. So, I feel like I have a personal tie to the place based on that, and hence Eugene Sledge has his own little, display. There's no equipment with it, but a picture of him in his dress blues and a placard, the picture of him on his bunk, am I right? Did you guys see that? I've been told it's there. I've seen a picture of it.
I can't really recall now, but they had us cycling and was going kind of quick with it.
Yeah,
I just want to make a quick stop off, but it does make sense that it's make it for the enlisted man, because there wasn't a lot of like glamorous stuff. It was all like nitty gritty kind of combat. A lot of that going on in there. I was like, oh, okay, this is awesome, man. But no, it's there's a lot in there. And I'm sure they've only added on, in the almost 18 years since I went there. But I supposedly there's
the Fredericksburg Museum has, right?
Yeah, I've got now my dad. There are some of my dad's things at the Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg. I took some things out there not long after he died. He died in March of 2001. My wife and I went out there November of 2001 and took some things out there, but I still have some things here. So yes, there are some things in the Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg.
We'll be there in 2 weeks for the Iwo celebrations and symposium. Yeah. But I do know the World War II Museum is interested in doing something about all this, so I can talk to you more about that, Henry.
Okay.
Well, and it's from the sounds of it, sounds like maybe in September is when the Library of Congress is happening.
Well,
September?
Is the Library of Congress? I thought it was June.
Well, I heard the last conversation that he had, they were suggesting pushing it back to September, just to give us a little bit more time. Because June was also this is around June 19th, 16th.
They were talking like the 23rd or 25th.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So when we go up there, we should definitely take a ride down to Marine Corps Museum. That'd be I've never been. I need to go.
So they are, that's an interesting, I was thinking, man, I called Leighton, like we talked last week, and I was like, man, we're already February. You're wanting to do this in June? The calendar's getting tight. There are people like Kirk Sadowski who are super important, high profile people. I know my calendar's filling up. Now I do have the book coming out, so that's kind of populating some things, but obviously, I'm holding time out for that, but it'd be good to see some official communication on what's happening and when. I got people asking me. So,
yeah, last I heard was around June 6th, and then Reg, you and Ma'am Tracy had a call with them.
Yeah. That's. I know he wants to get some of the stupid actors. He's just got to take the lead on it, and with the funding and stuff.
I told him I've got that, not to worry.
Okay.
So
I think once you have that in place with the museum, it's just booking a day. And I know, Kirk's going to be there, and you probably get Bruce and one or two of the stupid actors if you want. But once it's booked, then everyone knows. Okay, well, can I
put
make
it on
it
the calendar? Yeah, we got to get the date locked in, put it on the calendar, and when we're there, it would be cool to take a ride down to the Marine Corps Museum as well.
Yeah.
So, the architecture behind the museum. Do you know a little fun fact about that one?
I know there's something special about it, but
I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, it's the Iwo Jima flag raising.
Right.
Okay.
So you look at it, the beams are like this. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you can see it from that interstate.
Even like the way it's shaped and everything, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we do it.
I'd like I'd like to applaud Neil for not having the fan above him in his
Right? No
Not
fan.
Apocalypse Now, yeah. That's Bruce called me out on that. Bruce called me out on that one. It's Apocalypse Now. What's going on? What's going on over there, man?
Yeah,
Man.
yeah. Bruce, it wasn't more perfect. It couldn't have been more perfect than that. You
I
show
always
up.
have a fan. Henry. The thing is I always
Yeah.
I have a ceiling fan, and it's always in every podcast, so you can see it, the shadow. But that was the longest running joke. Now I told my fan I had to go on somewhere.
So that was the Apocalypse Now
That was-
fan.
Yeah, Bruce referred to it as Apocalypse Now. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Bruce
know
McKenna,
exactly
man.
the scene you're talking about.
Incredible guy,
And
man.
the Doors.
Yeah.
So, well, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Tracy Hunter, September 4th is what we're looking at. See, this is why we would be lost. We would be homeless. We would without
The gunning.
Tracy Hunter, man.
Without ma'am.
Tracy
Trace-
the Gunning.
She's the company gunny, man.
Company Gunny.
God, what would we do without you, Tracy?
Lost.
Lost, absolutely.
Just a bunch of E2s and E3s.
See, when we're left to our own devices, we end up in the Mini Cooper that drags the ground, trying to take us to hamburger stands and Palau. Just chaos ensues. So
We need Neil everywhere to carry the bags and
to ruck all the
to
gear.
ruck everything because Reg can't do it. But yeah,
So-
Henry, great to see you, and
Yeah.
very much look forward to your book coming out. And I know a couple of these things coming down the road and at the museums. We'll make this happen and spread the word.
Yeah, no, looking forward to things coming up, man. It's exciting.
Yeah,
Look-
no, congrats on that. Very much so.
look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah.
It'll happen by September or September 4th, whenever it happens. We'll make it happen. And greatly appreciate you coming on. It's crazy, man. We just end up in life in these places sometimes. You just could never imagine it. So, truly thankful to be able to speak with you and, your father telling the story that he told and just the image that he portrayed of the Marine Corps, which, led to the Pacific. And you've got guys like Robert Garcia and Freddie Joe Farnsworth working on it. And you're talking about how like that was the moment that, for the Marine Corps, like that production and, guys like Scott and Badger, Josh, Dale, it's just been an incredible ride. And your father was, a catalyst to that. So, truly humbled.
Well, no, look, I
100.
appreciate people asking, showing the interest. I never, trust me, I don't ever take that for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gentlemen, we appreciate it. Everybody out there, again, June 3rd, we'll have the link attached to this. We'll put it in the comments to Amazon to be able to pick up Sledge's book. This is going to have a lot more detail in it. Can't wait. It's going to be a great read.
Yeah.
And
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah. And we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We're always here. Reach out if you need anything. Reach out to your brothers if you need anything. And until next time, Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.